Kenyatta in Redlands, California. Hey, Kenyatta, how are you today?
I'm okay, Mr. Hartman. I hope that you're feeling okay. Sounds like you got a bit of a cough there, buddy.
I just inhaled wrong. I inhaled some saliva. I'm fine. But what's up?
Okay. All right. Listen, you made a comment earlier, and I don't take exception to you stating the fact, but it was very sobering. You said that with regard to this reparations discussion that is going on between the Hillary campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign, and in general, that it would be political suicide to really approach that issue. And that is a fact. But I was wondering if you really thought about your words and how sad it is that even that discussion would amount to political suicide in this country. Because, and I'm not going to get into that, Tom, because you would be, with regards to that issue, you're talking about institutional and systemic, very deep issues that have gone over centuries. And that's something that cannot be relegated into some commentary or brief conversation. So I will leave that at that. But I will say this. After Iowa, and when I hear that comment that Bill Clinton was the first black president, I don't know whether to jump off of a building or throw up. Because I could give a compelling argument if I were the devil's advocate on how the Clintons have been the right-wing Republicans, racist Republicans' best friend.
Well, that's the argument that Michelle Alexander made yesterday or the day before in The Nation, I think it was.
Yeah, well, what I do want to say this, Tom. After the Iowa caucuses, Bernie Sanders, and I don't know if you heard this, when he gave his speech afterwards, after the results were in, he was the only candidate on either side that actually addressed his comments to black people. And I thought that was extraordinary.
Yeah. I think, Bernie gets it, and I think he's gotten it his entire life. By the way, Kenyatta, hang on just a second. Grab this. We have this. We're on Free Speech TV, and people who donate money, if they donate $1,000 to Free Speech or to Our Children's Village, they can come to DC and have lunch with me. And day before yesterday, Dr. Marshall Lee came by and had lunch with me. He's the author of a book titled "Acknowledging the N-Word." He actually spells out the N-word. He's African American. In Us All: New African Keys for Moving Beyond Self-Esteem and Self-Hate. And he also brought me a book by Clarence Mumford, Race and Reparations: A Black Perspective of the 21st Century. He's a licensed clinical psychologist, and we went off to lunch. And Louise called me. Hang on, just say, let me set these books over here. We went off to lunch, and Louise called me like 2 hours later, like, "Where are you? What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just having the most fascinating conversation I've had in years." And I think that there is so much depth and breadth for a conversation about reparations that, and I think we're going to have that conversation, and we all need to have that conversation. But it's not. But it can't be a bumper sticker right now. It just can't be.
No, it can't. And let me say this to you real quick. If it has to be had at some point, I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, Tom, and I'll tell you why it has to be had. Because if it is never had, there will be a permanent defective, and I did use the word defective, population in this country.
Yeah. How so? I think there will be a permanent, sense of we've been had, and it never got cleaned up in a way that was fair.
I mean, Tom, I'm talking about as a black man. I go all over the state and in different parts of the country speaking to black young men in juvenile hall and that have gotten entangled with the law one way or the other.
Right.
And I will tell you that there are relationships between the lack of performance in black schools and black areas all over this country and the 400-year history of not teaching us to read and write and keeping education from us. We have to have these conversations, and we have to be honest about it. And that's what I mean about a permanent defective population. Let me just say this real quick. One young man, I asked them to introduce themselves, and this one young man, he was 16 years old, and he stood up and he said to me, he's a young black man, and I said, well, tell me about why you're here, so forth and so on. He said, PPHD, bro. And I said, what is that? I didn't know what it was. And it stood for pimp, player, hustler, gangster, which is some type of a street gang. And we have to have these conversations because we are, by the policies of this country, we have become a defective people.
Right.
And if black people don't want to say it, that's too goddamn bad. Pardon my expression.
Yeah, and I think we can say that on the radio, although I understand your passion, and if anybody was offended, let me apologize. We didn't dump it. Okay. Kenyatta, I think you and I just began that conversation about reparations, and which is fine with me, although, again, I think that we should have that at let's start in 10 months or 11 months and seriously get into this stuff. But tell me if I'm wrong. What I heard you say, what I think I heard you say, what I understood you to say, was that without reparations, without some way of getting the black population in this country to some kind of parity with the white population in terms of economic and social, both wealth and opportunity, that without that damage just continues. That as long as we haven't solved that problem, as long as we haven't created that parity, and I would argue that LBJ with the Great Society was taking the first step towards solving that. And of course, Republicans have whittled away from that. And you could even argue that in some way is reparations, although I think not, because it was designed for all poor people in the United States. In fact, some of its largest impact was in Appalachia. But am I understanding correctly what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying, and I certainly don't mean, and I don't want it ever trivialized to black people wanting a check, because that's not going to solve the situation. I wouldn't dare. No. We have to talk about education. We have to talk about a whole bunch of very heavy things that checks aren't going to solve.
Yep. Infrastructure, education, job opportunities, access to things like high-speed internet and clean water, and I mean, I guess that goes without saying, but yeah, there is a long list. Kenyatta, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Thank you very much. I always appreciate your thoughtful analysis of things.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.